Welcome to the Trauma Llama Club. Today I want to share my personal journey with complex PTSD. It's been a long road, but I'm hoping by sharing my story that it can help someone going through something similar. Join us. Your TLC adventure starts here. I've been a police officer for 20 years, but once I was diagnosed with complex PTSD and started working with psychologists, we could actually trace my symptoms back to the first 5 years of service. When I initially took time off from work, I thought it was due to family stressors. We had some medical issues within the family, and between appointments and shift work, I really wasn't sleeping well. And so in my mind, I would have taken some time off, gotten through those stressors, and been right back to work. But that's not exactly how this turned out. Once I was able to remove the stressors from work, the stressors from home, that's when my symptoms of complex PTSD really rose to the surface. And it was a really confusing time for me. It was overwhelming. I couldn't understand why, when I wasn't even working at the time, that all of a sudden I was having flashbacks and dreams and night terrors about calls that I had been on in my first few years of policing. My PTSD manifested as anxiety, which, from my understanding, most police officers or first responders tend to go the other way. They get more reactive, and it can show up almost in anger. And I really associated that with the fight and flight response. And so to me, being afraid of everyday interactions with people, being afraid of going to the grocery store, of going downtown, of being in crowds, symbolized that at the heart of things, I had a flight response. And that caused me a lot of shame. In policing, first responders in total, but especially in policing, we run towards the danger. And I spent years going towards the danger and helping people in that situation. And so when all of a sudden I was reacting in fear, I really questioned whether I had ever been worthy of being a police officer. And I questioned whether I was even worthy of a PTSD diagnosis. I battled with that for probably the first year after my diagnosis. What I didn't know is that complex PTSD existed, and I didn't know what complex PTSD was. In my mind, I had always been told to watch out for the signs and symptoms of PTSD, but I had also been taught that PTSD is a product of being in a life-threatening situation. Now, I went to my share of calls that were dangerous. Were there times that my safety was at risk? Yes. Was I ever shot at? Was I ever stabbed? Did I ever have to take someone's life in the course of my duties? No. In that way, was very fortunate throughout my career. But because of that, I didn't even want to tell anybody that I had PTSD. I thought that I would be judged and that it was a sign of weakness that I could get PTSD from just regular calls for service. What I didn't know is that complex PTSD is the most common type of PTSD amongst first responders and amongst police officers. And it stems from multiple traumatic experiences, multiple, quote unquote, what we would call standard calls for service that stack on top of each other over time. And it can be one of the hardest types of PTSD to treat. So when my complex PTSD symptoms first rose to the surface, what I was dealing with was flashbacks, anxiety, night terrors, panic attacks, hypervigilance, dissociation, and all of that led to physiological symptoms. So I would go out in public and I would get really tense. I would hold the tension from always being on edge, and that would manifest into migraines, muscle tension, muscle aches and pains that sometimes would take me days to recover from. Because of that, I did what most people do when they're met with a stimulus that they don't like. I started avoiding it. I didn't want to go out into public and see people, interact with people, be in any crowds or situations that would make me feel like shit. The problem with avoiding those things is that I became very isolated. My world got smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's probably the lowest I've ever felt. When I think about my journey, I consider that my rock bottom, because I was not in contact with anyone but my family. I wasn't engaging in meaningful experiences, and it led to the worst depression that I've ever experienced. But over time, through working with my therapist, doing EMDR, trauma processing, and doing exposure therapy, I was able to slowly expand my world outwards and start being able to relate to people again, start to be able to engage with people again, and start to live a life outside of my house. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonates with you, I hope it helps you to feel less alone. Just know that if you're struggling with PTSD or any mental health, it's okay to reach out for help. There are resources that will make things better. If you found this video helpful, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more content on how to manage PTSD and mental health. Take care, remember to indulge in the TLC you deserve, and we'll see you in the next video.